Hey there, my name's Jules Lustenader, and today I'm going to teach you how to do the Kitchener stitch. This stitch is used to graft two sets of live stitches together to create a seamless project. I'm going to use this for my latest pattern, the Yes You Canyon cowl. First things first, here's what you're going to need. A pair of scissors, a darning needle, an extra set of knitting needles, some leftover yarn from your project, and of course, your knitting. So let's get started. At this point in your pattern, you should have completed your last round of knitting. These are the needles I've been using for the whole project. And my project is exactly how I want it lengthwise, and I'm ready to graft the two ends together. Go to the beginning of your work where you should have some scrap yarn holding together a provisional cast on. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you want to learn how to do the provisional cast on, you can watch my previous video called How to Knit the Provisional Cast On. So as you can see, this yellow yarn is just scrap yarn. It's not part of my project. What it's doing is it's holding these stitches live, and we need to get those stitches back on back on a pair of needles. That's where this extra set comes in. What we're going to do is we're going to carefully undo the scrap yarn and put those live stitches on this needle. The best way to undo a provisional cast on is to undo it from a long chain you've created at the end of your work. So I'm just going to pull this loose. You'll see it will naturally unravel, which is kind of scary, but trust me on this. Just keep pulling, but slowly, until you see your first stitch pop out. Ah, there it is. It might want to escape from you, but that's your first stitch. And you want to get that on your needle as soon as you can. You actually want it this way, so it's not twisted, and that'll make more sense in a second. Continue picking up those stitches as they appear when you pull your scrap yarn away, like that. If we're doing this right, we're going to pick up the amount of stitches we casted on. For this project, that is 62 stitches, I believe. So that's the amount we're going to keep picking up. One at a time is the best way to get this done correctly. It's a little slow, but trust me, your patience is so worth it in the end. Okay, I'm at my last stitch of this first row to pick up, so I'm going to get rid of this scrap yarn here and toss it to the side. We don't need it anymore. And pick up that last stitch right there. And then look at that. We have all of our stitches ready to go on another set of needles. Now let's set up the beginning of the Kitchener stitch. Okay, so what I've done here is I have set up my first row of knitting to face my last row of knitting, like this. So the right side is facing out towards me. If I still had my markers in place, my marker would be here for the beginning of this row and over here for the beginning of that row. Now, I've also hooked up my darning needle to some extra yarn left over from the yarn I was using for the project. What's cool about this yarn is it's self-striping, so the pattern continues on, and I know that I have the right color yarn for this row of grafting. What's cool about the Kitchener stitch, it's not that you're sewing two ends together, you're really creating an extra row of knitting. So it's important that whatever yarn you use for this graft is the color that you want. Don't use a scrap yarn that doesn't match your project at all. Try to use a yarn that goes with your project so it looks like a seamless seam. Let's get started. Step 1. Take your darning needle, enter it into the first stitch on your front needle as if to purl. Pull the yarn through all the way. We have a lot of yarn here because we have a lot of stitches to graft. And leave that stitch on your needle. Next, with your darning needle, enter the first stitch on the back needle as if to knit. And pull the yarn through. And leave that stitch on the needle. This stitch might be a little loose if you have a tail going on, so pull it tight. These first 2 steps are only going to happen at the beginning of this process. The rest of the steps I'm going to show you repeat until we've grafted all the stitches. Next, with my darning needle, I'm going to go into this first stitch on my front needle as if to knit, pull the yarn through, and slip that stitch off of my needle, like that. Now, step 4, I'm going to put my darning needle into the next stitch on my front knitting needle as if to purl and pull the yarn through, but I'm going to leave this stitch on. Step 5, with my darning needle, go into the first stitch on the back knitting needle as if to purl, pull the yarn through, and slip that off. Last step, step 6, go into the first needle on the back knitting needle, first stitch on the back knitting needle as if to knit, and pull the yarn through. And leave this stitch on. Great! What we've done is we've grafted 1 stitch on each set of needles. You're going to repeat this process from step 3 through step 6 over and over and over and over. So let's do it again. Step 3 was to knit in the first stitch on the front needle and to slip it off. Next step, purl into the first stitch on your front needle, pull the yarn through, and keep it there. Next step, purl into the back, pull the yarn through, slip it off. Last step, knit into the back, pull the yarn through, but keep that stitch on the needle. One way I like to think about the Kitchener stitch is the pattern knit, purl, purl, knit. I'm always going to start with the first stitch on my front needle here, and if I follow knit, purl, purl, knit, I should do everything in the right order. So let's do it. Knit in the front, pull it off, purl the next one in the front, keep it there. We purl the first stitch in the back, and we'll slip it off, and we'll knit the next stitch in the back, and we'll keep it there. You'll start to notice, if you look back at what we've done so far, that another row is forming, which is great. See, we got these guys here. As you go, it's a good idea to adjust your tension. Just make sure that these stitches are looking uniform, that they're not too loose, that they're not too tight. And just keep repeating the process. Knit in the front, slip it off, purl in the front, and keep it there. Purl in the back, slip it off, and knit in the back, and keep it there. It's a tedious process that really gives you a nice finished seam. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I'll let you know how it looks when I'm done. Okay, I've been grafting like crazy, and I have 2 stitches left on both needles. Check out that invisible seam there. This row here is our graft. Isn't that crazy? It's like nothing's ever there. Anyway, so let's finish up our steps. Step 3 was knit in front, pull the yarn through, slip that stitch off, purl in front for step 4, pull the yarn through, keep it on, purl the first stitch on the back needle, slip that off, and knit the stitch on the back needle, but keep it on. Here you're not really going to be able to finish the process all the way, just keep going. Step 1 is knit and slip off, and you can go, whoops, we can get rid of the needles we were using for the front. Don't need them anymore. You see here, you can either go straight into that one like a purl up here to finish that and pull the yarn through. Just giving me some trouble today. And just kind of tighten and see where that leaves you. You'll have a little bit of a hole, but that's okay, because you have some yarn in here that you need to weave in anyway. You have an end from before. If I can find it, it's in here somewhere. Ah, there it is. Pull that out. So now all you have to do is weave in these ends to close up that hole, and you can use whatever process you prefer, but I'll leave that up to you. Whatever you do, make sure it's secure and the tail is hidden on the inside of your work. You can just pull the darning needle through and cut the yarn there, and it'll stay inside your work. But I want to show you what it looks like when you're done. This is what it looks like. You can barely tell where it is. You can only tell because you're the one who did it. And that's the Kitchener stitch. Thanks for watching. If you would like to download the full Yes You Canyon cowl pattern, you can do so for free on Ravelry and Love Knitting, and I'll have a link provided in the description, as well as instructions for what we did today, so you can have written instructions to go with this video. Thanks again, and happy knitting!